A guy who's not focused on sports, but focused on the sport of politics. He's the author of Vengeance. Speaker Gingrich, welcome back.
Good morning.
Good to be with you guys.
Mr. Speaker, first off, the compelling...
Last night was, by the way, last night was about as... I was going to say, last night was about as good a way to enter the new year as you could get, at least if you were a Georgia fan.
That's true.
And
You're
of course
from
you
Georgia.
are. Absolutely. And the patriotic display before was just a stark contrast of what we've been seeing in other football games. But I was really surprised. I did not know. We do not get word out about Iranian population and the mood. We know they're young. We know they're highly educated. But, man, we are seeing their frustration bubble over, aren't we?
We are, and I think President Trump is exactly right to be pushing hard, to be publicly condemning the dictatorship. I think you're seeing the dictatorship once again, this will be the fourth time now, being delegitimized. At one point in the late 1980s, they actually killed 30,000 people to try to establish their control of the country. And I think once again you're seeing people in Iran say, look, this is not a good deal. This is not a good standard of living. You're taking all this money Obama gave you and you're spending it on Hezbollah and on Hamas and on making trouble around the region. We want you to spend it here at home. And this is a I think, very important moment to really push the dictatorship and decide publicly with the Iranian people.
Well, our president is now saying this morning, sanctions if you don't allow them to continue to protest. What happens next? What will they take down this dictatorship? What do you foresee in 2018 or the next few months?
Well, I think it depends on the nerve of the dictatorship. Look, if you're a really strong dictatorship and you're willing to kill enough people, you probably survive. We're seeing this happen in Venezuela right now, where there's a terrible, unbelievable human crisis underway with a dictatorship which is willing to have children die of malnutrition, willing to kill people, willing to do whatever it takes to survive. So if the Iranian Revolutionary Guard still has the nerve, they can go a long way. On the other hand, if the Europeans, who are very squeamish about this, the Europeans really are confused because they'd like to cut a deal and do business with the Iranians, but they really do hate this kind of suppression. And I think if they were to join with us, for example, in saying that anybody who is involved in killing the demonstrators could be subjected to international law as a criminal, as a war criminal, which we've done, for example, in the Balkans, I think that would begin to rattle the system. And I know in the fall of the Soviet Empire that Ronald Reagan's speaking out made a really big difference psychologically. I think if the Europeans would join President Trump in speaking out, they might have a surprisingly big impact on the resolve of the Iranian people and on undermining the resolve of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard.
And had Barack Obama spoken out in 2009, back to last time stuff like this happened, we might not be where we are today. Newt, I got a question for you, and because you're so good at reading the political landscape, I'm sure you watch other channels, you watch this channel, you know that there have been a lot of pundits and political observers who say that for the most part, this is the year, the election in November of 2018, the Democrats are really going to make hay. But you say that if the stars align correctly, this could actually be a great year for Republicans. Could you explain that?
Sure. Look, I'm writing a new book called Trump's America, and the whole opening of the book is all of these folks who've been wrong. You know, they were wrong in 2015. They said Trump would never be a credible candidate. They were wrong in 2016. They said he couldn't get the nomination. He couldn't beat Hillary. They've been wrong for all of 2017. You go back and look at New York Times columnists who said, you know, oh, when Trump gets sworn in, the stock market's going to crash. Well, the stock market boomed. None of these guys learn anything. And so you're in a situation right now. The best example to me was CBS News, which ran a story about three very different people, all of whom get tax cuts. Now, all of a sudden, I just read another story about medical doctors. Every kind of medical doctor gets a tax cut. All of a sudden, all these left-wing lies, which is what they are, that you see on these networks and you see in the Washington Post and the New York Times, all of a sudden they're faced with the reality, people are going to get tax cuts. Probably 85 or 90% of the American people are going to get a tax cut. You're seeing pay go up. You're seeing jobs increase. You're seeing a sense of confidence. If the Republicans can get their act together, and the biggest problem here is the Republicans, not the Democrats. If the Republicans, led by the president, can focus in on winning the argument about the tax bill, spend the whole year pounding away at the notion jobs are created by businesses, cutting taxes and cutting regulations creates jobs. and let the Democrats be the party of socialism, big government, and big bureaucracy, I think we could win a surprising election this fall.
Mr. Speaker, I think that most people think the White House has got to get a better political operation to help out people in their own party. Do you agree with that, and where do you start with that?
Sure. Well, I know for a fact that they are working to put together the kind of operation you need for this fall. But I'd also say, if you look at what Ronna McDaniel's done as the chairman of the Republican National Committee, she has raised so much more money than anybody thought possible. The resources they're going to bring to bear. We're going to have a pretty darn good political team, I think, this year. The question is whether they can agree on a strategy. And, of course, what I'm advocating, and the reason I'm optimistic in my newsletters and the things I publish at foxnews.com is I believe the underlying momentum of the country is towards the Republicans and away from the Democrats, despite every effort of the left-wing media. And I think when people come down to voting, you want higher taxes, you want lower taxes. You want more jobs, you want fewer jobs. As you pointed out about Obama, you want weakness dealing with Iran, you want strength dealing with Iran. Every time you get to those kind of questions and you get away from the noise, people, I think, by 65, 70% favor the Republican position.
Yeah, I just hope the president takes your advice and starts working the phones and gets these European leaders on our side this time for this.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.